The golden light of the artificial sunrise streamed through the diamond-paned windows of Nexus Prime Station, casting prismatic patterns across the Grand Assembly Hall. 52 species gathered for the Interplanetary Diplomatic Summit, representatives of worlds scattered across 3 galactic arms. Each delegate arrived with a companion creature, a tradition dating back to the first contact protocols established nearly a century ago. Dr. Mira Shah stood alone at the entrance, watching the procession with practiced neutrality. Her dark eyes cataloged each arrival, noting the symbiotic relationships on display. The Xanthari ambassador glided in on iridescent wings, a small cloud of luminescent spores floating in perfect geometric patterns around his elongated head. The Kree delegation marched in perfect synchronicity, each member accompanied by a chrome-plated mechanical serpent that coiled elegantly around their forearms. The Quarian representative, a crystalline entity that refracted light in hypnotic patterns, was flanked by tiny, hovering jellyfish-like creatures that sang in harmonious tones whenever she moved. "Where is your companion, Human Shaw?" The question came from Ambassador Krelix, a Xanthari whose spores shifted to a mocking violet hue. His 4 eyes blinked in sequential order as he hovered before her. Or does Earth still not grasp the symbolic importance of the companion protocol? Mira smiled, the gesture not reaching her eyes. "I understand its significance perfectly, Ambassador. My companion will make an appearance at the appropriate time." The typical human arrogance, Krelix's translator device intoned, though his body language communicated far more derision than the mechanical voice could convey. "You think you can disregard our traditions because your species helped establish the station." "Not at all," Mira replied, maintaining her diplomatic composure. "I simply believe that relationships between species should be founded on mutual respect and understanding, not superficial displays." The Xanthari's spores darkened to a dismissive gray. Bold words from the only delegate without a companion. "The swearing-in ceremony is in 3 days. Will your understanding materialize by then?" "I expect so," Mira said, straightening the collar of her midnight blue uniform, emblazoned with the silver insignia of Earth's diplomatic corps. "Though perhaps not in the form you anticipate?" The Xanthari drifted away, his spores pulsing with what Mira recognized as their species' equivalent of laughter. She sighed, watching as delegates continued to enter, each showcasing increasingly elaborate companions. Some were clearly genetically engineered for aesthetic appeal. Others were technological marvels designed to impress. All were statements of status, power, and wealth, living accessories rather than true partners. Mira's thoughts drifted to the secure containment bay, several levels below, where her true companion waited. She wondered, not for the first time, if her plan was reckless. Commander Rox had certainly thought so when she'd first proposed it. "This isn't about making a statement, Commander," she had told the station security chief. "It's about challenging a fundamental misunderstanding in interspecies diplomacy." Rox, a veteran of 3 interplanetary conflicts, had looked at her with a mixture of respect and concern. "Just make sure your challenge doesn't trigger an interstellar incident, Dr. Shaw." Now, as Mira watched the assembled delegates showcase their companions like fashion accessories, she felt renewed conviction. Tomorrow would change everything, either advancing interspecies understanding or ending her diplomatic career in spectacular fashion. Possibly both. She slipped away from the Grand Hall, making her way through the station's labyrinthine corridors to the secure bay. The biometric scanners hummed as they verified her identity, the reinforced door sliding open with a pneumatic hiss. Inside, illuminated by soft blue light, a massive containment unit dominated the center of the room. Through the transparent walls, a pair of bioluminescent eyes met hers, intelligent, alert, and unmistakably predatory. "Hello, Calyx," Mira said softly. Are you ready to make history? The creature's eyes blinked once, slowly and deliberately. The swearing-in ceremony was a pageant of interstellar diplomacy. One by one, delegates approached the central dais, companion creatures in tow, to pledge their commitment to peaceful cooperation. The Galactic Council representatives watched from elevated seats, their expressions inscrutable as they evaluated each new addition to the diplomatic corps. When Mira's turn came, whispers rippled through the assembly. She approached the dais alone, her steps measured and confident. Dr. Mira Shah of Earth, announced the Master of Ceremonies, a Tellurian whose translucent skin revealed the complex network of neural pathways beneath. Where is your companion? My companion will join us tomorrow, Mira stated, her voice carrying across the hushed chamber. I request a brief extension of the companion presentation protocol. The Tellurian's neural pathways flashed with surprise. Unprecedented. The companion introduction is an integral part of the swearing-in. I am well aware, Mira replied. However, my companion requires special accommodations. I ask for 3 days to prepare the appropriate environment for their comfort and safety. Murmurs of disapproval rose from the assembled delegates. Ambassador Krelix's spores pulsed an angry red. This is an insult to our traditions, he declared, hovering higher to ensure all could see his displeasure. The human seeks special treatment. The Galactic Council's senior representative, an ancient Meridian whose scaled skin had faded to pale ivory with age, raised a gnarled hand for silence. Dr. Shaw, you understand that the companion tradition is not merely ceremonial, but a demonstration of your species' capacity for symbiotic relationship, the foundation of all diplomatic exchange in our shared galaxy? I do understand, Elder Zorix, Mira replied with a respectful bow. Which is precisely why I require these 3 days. What I wish to demonstrate goes beyond tradition. It speaks to the very heart of true interspecies cooperation. The elder studied her for a long moment, his compound eyes reflecting the chamber's light in faceted patterns. 3 days, he finally pronounced. Not as special treatment, but as a demonstration of our own diplomatic flexibility. We await your presentation with interest, Dr. Shaw. Mira bowed again, ignoring the undercurrent of disapproval that swept through the chamber. She completed her oath, hand placed on the universal symbol of truth, a crystal that responded to the bioelectric field of any sentient being, glowing brighter when genuine intent was expressed. The crystal blazed with unusual intensity under Mira's touch, causing several delegates to shift uncomfortably. As she stepped down from the dais, Ambassador Krelix drifted into her path. Whatever spectacle you're planning, human, it won't change the fundamental truth. Your species lacks the evolutionary history of symbiosis that defines truly advanced civilizations. Perhaps, Mira replied with a small smile, or perhaps we've evolved different kinds of partnerships than you recognize. I look forward to expanding your perspective, Ambassador. For the next 3 days, Mira was conspicuously absent from most diplomatic functions, spending hours in secure communications with Earth and even longer periods in the containment bay. Station security reported unusual power allocations to the bay's environmental systems, and rumors spread among the delegates about what bizarre Earth creature the human diplomat might present. I've heard it's one of their dogs, simplistic pack animals they've domesticated, said a Vorlian diplomat, whose own companion was a sentient fungal network that enhanced cognitive function. Too obvious, countered a Trill representative. My sources say it's an aquatic creature. They've been adjusting the atmospheric humidity in the lower levels. Ambassador Krelix encouraged the speculation, his spores forming patterns that translated roughly to amused disdain. Whatever it is, it will demonstrate the primitive nature of Earth's understanding of true companionship. On the morning of the 4th day, a message was distributed to all delegates, inviting them to the Grand Assembly Hall for Dr. Mira Shah's companion presentation. The unusual formality of the invitation, coupled with a list of safety protocols, only heightened the collective curiosity. When the delegates arrived, they found the hall's configuration altered. A reinforced containment unit, large enough to hold a small transport vehicle, stood on the central platform. The transparent walls revealed nothing but darkness within. Station security personnel were positioned at strategic points around the room, led by Commander Rox, whose expression revealed nothing of his thoughts on the matter. At precisely the appointed hour, Mira entered, dressed in the full ceremonial uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. She walked to the center of the room, positioned herself beside the containment unit, and addressed the assembly. Distinguished delegates, honored representatives of the Galactic Council, I thank you for your patience. Today, I wish to challenge not just your expectations, but our collective understanding of what constitutes a diplomatic companion. She pressed her palm against a biometric scanner on the unit's exterior. The opacity of the walls began to fade, revealing the massive form within. Gasps and exclamations in a dozen alien languages filled the chamber as the creature came into view. Standing over 4 meters tall, Calyx was a marvel of evolutionary perfection. Its exoskeleton gleamed with a metallic iridescence, shifting colors as it moved. 6 limbs, 4 ending in precision manipulators, 2 in what were unmistakably weapons, were folded against its segmented body. Its head, dominated by 4 bioluminescent eyes, swiveled with predatory awareness, cataloging every being in the room. Most striking was the neural crest that extended from the crown of its head, a biological antenna array that pulsed with complex patterns of light. This, Mira announced into the stunned silence, is Calyx, a Critherian apex predator from the Epsilon Eridani system. The chamber erupted in chaos. Several delegates retreated toward the exits, their companion creatures exhibiting various signs of distress. Ambassador Krelix's spores had blanched to a pale, alarmed white. "This is madness!" he shrieked, his translator struggling to modulate the panic in his voice. "That creature has decimated colonization efforts in 3 systems. It's a planet killer." "That," Mira replied calmly, "is precisely the kind of misinformation I'm here to correct." She turned to face Calyx, who had oriented all 4 eyes toward her. "The Critherians are not mindless predators, but a highly intelligent, telepathic species whose territory was invaded without proper communication protocols." The Galactic Council's Elder Zorix raised his hand, bringing a measure of order to the chamber. "Dr. Shaw, regardless of your academic position on Critherian intelligence, bringing such a dangerous life form to a diplomatic station constitutes a serious security breach." "With respect, Elder," Mira countered. "I've followed all containment protocols. Calyx is secured by 3 independent systems, including a neural dampening field that prevents any aggressive action." "The mere presence of this creature is an act of aggression," Ambassador Krelix declared, now hovering near the ceiling, as far from the containment unit as possible. "I formally protest this mockery of diplomatic tradition." Murmurs of agreement spread through the assembly. Several delegates were already using their communication devices, presumably filing official complaints. Mira raised her voice to be heard above the growing tumult. "For centuries, your species have paraded decorative, non-threatening creatures as symbols of diplomatic companionship. You've mistaken aesthetics for substance, domestication for partnership. True diplomatic relationships are not based on dominance or ornamentation, but on mutual respect between intelligent beings." She placed her hand against the transparent wall of the containment unit. Calyx mirrored the gesture, a massive clawed appendage extending to meet her palm on the other side. "Calyx is not my pet or my accessory. We are research partners. For 3 years, we've developed a communication system that bridges the gap between our neurological structures. What the Epsilon Eridani colonists failed to recognize, what you all fail to recognize, is that intelligence doesn't always manifest in forms we immediately understand. The elder studied the interaction with evident fascination. "You claim to communicate with this predator?" "I do more than claim it, Elder. Mira's response was cut short by a sudden, violent tremor that shook the entire station. Warning sirens blared as the lights flickered, plunging the chamber into momentary darkness before emergency systems engaged. Commander Rox's communication device activated. "Security breach in Sector 7. Unknown entity has penetrated the outer hull." The commander's voice was steady, despite the evident crisis. "All delegates, remain in the Grand Hall. Security protocols are engaging." Another tremor, stronger than the first, rocked the station. The delegates' companion creatures reacted with various displays of distress. The Xanthari spores scattered in chaotic patterns. The mechanical serpents coiled defensively. The singing jellyfish fell silent. "What's happening?" demanded Ambassador Krelix, his translator barely audible above the alarms. Commander Rox accessed the station's security feed, projecting it onto the chamber's main display. The footage showed a corridor near the outer hull, where something was moving with alarming speed, a metallic, multi-limbed entity that seemed to flow like liquid mercury one moment and coalesce into a solid, blade-like form the next. "Living metal," breathed the Trill representative in horror. "A phasmorph." "Impossible," countered the Vorlian diplomat. "They were contained in the Cygnus quarantine zone centuries ago." "Evidently not," Commander Rox replied grimly. "All security teams, converge on Sector 7. Evacuation protocols for non-essential personnel." The chamber doors sealed automatically as the station shifted to emergency status. The delegates clustered together, their earlier antagonism forgotten in the face of a common threat. Their companion creatures, bred or designed for beauty and status rather than utility, provided little comfort in the crisis. Another violent tremor, and the main lights failed completely. In the dim emergency illumination, the delegates watched with mounting horror as the security feed showed the phasmorph moving inexorably toward the station's central hub, toward the Grand Assembly Hall. "The containment protocols are failing," Commander Rox announced, his voice tight. "It's absorbing energy from our defense systems, growing stronger. We've never encountered one this size." Mira watched the feed with intense concentration, her mind racing through options. She glanced at Calyx, who had pressed all four eyes against the transparent wall, tracking the phasmorph's movement with predatory focus. "Commander," Mira said quietly, "I have a proposition." Rox moved to her side, keeping his voice low. "Dr. Shaw, whatever you're thinking." "Calyx can stop it," she interrupted. "Critherians evolved hunting similar entities in their home system. Their exoskeleton is impervious to the molecular disruption phasmorphs use to consume organic matter." The commander's expression hardened. "You want me to release one apex predator to fight another, in a station full of diplomatic personnel?" "I want you to let me deploy an asset specifically equipped to handle this threat," Mira countered. "Calyx won't harm any delegates. Our neural link ensures that—" "Neural link, you expect me to believe?" A thunderous crash interrupted their debate as the phasmorph breached the adjacent corridor. The security feed showed the creature pausing, its fluid form extending sensory tendrils toward the life signs concentrated in the Grand Hall. "It's hunting," Mira said urgently. "It senses the high concentration of diverse biological material. We're in a buffet line, Commander." Rox's gaze shifted between the security feed, the terrified delegates, and Calyx's containment unit. "If that thing gets in here, we lose the most important diplomatic gathering in 50 years. If your creature goes rogue, same result." "Not rogue, partner." Mira held his gaze. "Trust me, Commander." Another crash, closer now, on the security feed. The phasmorph surged forward, its metallic body flowing through gaps in the station's structural supports. "Do it," Rox finally ordered. "But I'm authorizing lethal measures against both creatures if this goes wrong." Mira nodded once, then turned to the containment unit. She placed her palm on the biometric scanner, simultaneously entering a complex override code. Security Override Shaw Epsilon 93. Release containment. The transparent walls receded into the floor with a hydraulic hiss. Calyx unfolded to its full, imposing height, its exoskeleton shifting through chromatic patterns that reflected its heightened alertness. The delegates recoiled in collective terror as the predator stepped free. Mira stood her ground, looking up at the towering creature. She raised her hand in a specific gesture, then emitted a series of whistling sounds, complex, modulated tones that seemed to carry patterns beyond simple signals. Calyx's neural crest pulsed with corresponding light patterns. The creature lowered its head until it was level with Mira's, all four eyes focused intently on her face. Another series of whistles from Mira, and the predator's posture shifted subtly, from general alertness to targeted hunting mode. At that moment, the chamber's reinforced doors buckled inward as the phasmorph slammed against them. The metal glowed red where the creature's acidic outer layer made contact, molecular bonds dissolving under the assault. "It's coming through!" Commander Rox shouted, positioning his security team in a defensive formation. "All delegates, retreat to the inner chamber." The delegates scrambled backward, their companion creatures adding to the chaos with various vocalizations of distress. Ambassador Krelix's spores scattered in panic, some drifting directly into the path of the buckling door. Mira issued another whistle command, sharper and more urgent. Calyx responded instantly, moving with astonishing speed for such a massive being. It positioned itself between the delegates and the failing door, its weaponized limbs extending to full combat readiness. With a final, catastrophic screech of stressed metal, the doors gave way. The phasmorph poured into the chamber like liquid quicksilver, immediately coalescing into a jagged, blade-like form as it sensed the biological bounty before it. Its body pulsed with an internal light that shifted between sickly green and metallic blue. Before Commander Rox could give the order to fire, Mira emitted a final, piercing whistle. Calyx launched forward with explosive force, crossing the chamber in 3 bound strides. The Crytherian slammed into the phasmorph with precision violence, weaponized limbs striking at the exact points where the metallic creature's form was most coherent. The battle that followed defied description in any single language. The phasmorph fought with the desperate hunger of a creature long starved, attempting to engulf portions of Calyx's exoskeleton. The Crytherian countered with evolutionary experience, its limbs moving in complex patterns that kept the metallic entity off balance. When the phasmorph attempted to flow around Calyx to reach the delegates, the predator anticipated the maneuver, emitting a high-frequency resonance from specialized organs in its thorax. The sound visibly disrupted the phasmorph's molecular cohesion, forcing it to re-solidify in a more vulnerable configuration. Throughout the combat, Mira maintained a continuous stream of whistled communications, and Calyx's neural crest pulsed in synchronized patterns. The delegates watched in astonishment as the Crytherian executed maneuvers that seemed tactically impossible without central direction. "It's actually following her commands," murmured the Trill representative. "Impossible." Ambassador Krelix's spores had regrouped into a tight formation, their color shifting from panic white to a deep, attentive blue. "Not commands," he corrected, his translator capturing the nuance of his realization. "Communication, partnership." The battle reached its climax when the phasmorph, sensing defeat, attempted a desperate lunge toward the nearest cluster of delegates. Calyx intercepted with mathematical precision, driving specialized appendages into the creature's core structure. A pulse of bioenergy, visible as a cascade of light through the Crytherian's neural crest, discharged directly into the phasmorph. The metallic entity convulsed, its cohesion failing catastrophically. It collapsed into a puddle of inert material, molecular bonds permanently disrupted by the precisely calibrated energy discharge. In the sudden silence that followed, Calyx stepped back from the defeated enemy and turned toward Mira. The massive predator folded its combat limbs and lowered itself in a posture that somehow conveyed both deference and partnership. Mira approached without hesitation, placing her hand directly on the creature's neural crest. Pulses of light synchronized with her touch. "Thank you, partner," she said, the words clearly meant for Calyx alone. Commander Rox cautiously approached, his weapon still at ready. "Is it contained?" "The phasmorph is neutralized," Mira confirmed. "Calyx disrupted its molecular cohesion matrix. It can't reconstitute." "Not the phasmorph," Rox clarified, eyeing the Critherian. "Your companion." Mira smiled slightly. "Calyx doesn't need physical containment. Commander, our neural link provides all the assurance you need." As if to demonstrate, she issued another series of whistled tones. Calyx immediately moved to the far side of the chamber and assumed a non-threatening posture. Neural crest dimming to a soft, ambient glow. The delegates watched in stunned silence. Their companion creatures, which had cowered during the conflict, began to emerge from hiding. The mechanical serpents uncurling, the spores reforming, the singing jellyfish tentatively resuming their melodic hums. Elder Zorix was the first to approach Mira. The ancient Meridian moved with deliberate slowness, his scaled skin reflecting the emergency lights as he studied both human and Critherian with equal intensity. "In 5 centuries of diplomatic service," he said, his voice a dry whisper that nonetheless carried throughout the chamber, "I have never witnessed such a demonstration of true interspecies cooperation." Ambassador Krelix drifted forward, his spores now pulsing, with a color Mira had never observed before, a deep, respectful indigo. "I owe you an apology, Dr. Shaw. I mistook your delay as human arrogance. I see now it was preparation for genuine understanding." One by one, the delegates approached, their earlier fear transforming into cautious fascination. They peppered Mira with questions about the neural communication system, the years of research that had preceded this demonstration, the true nature of Critherian intelligence. Commander Rox organized the cleanup of the phasmorph remains, dispatching teams to verify no trace of the creature remained active. He paused beside Mira as the delegates continued their inquiries. "That was either the most reckless or the most brilliant diplomatic maneuver I've witnessed in 20 years of service," he said quietly. "Perhaps both," Mira replied with a small smile. "The best diplomacy often walks that line. The Council will have questions. Many questions." "I look forward to answering them," Mira said, watching as several delegates cautiously approached Calyx, who remained perfectly still under their scrutiny. "This was never about making a statement, Commander. It was about demonstrating a truth that's been overlooked in our rush to categorize and contain the unknown." "And what truth is that, Doctor?" Mira's gaze shifted between Calyx and the assembled delegates. "That true understanding doesn't come from domesticating what we fear, but from respecting its nature and finding common ground, even with an apex predator." 6 months later, the Nexus Prime Station hosted another gathering, this time a symposium on interspecies neural communication protocols. Dr. Mira Shaw was the keynote speaker, but she shared the presentation platform with Calyx, whose neural crest displayed educational diagrams that complemented Mira's lecture. The diplomatic corps had undergone significant changes in those months. The companion tradition remained, but its purpose had been fundamentally redefined. No longer were companions selected primarily for aesthetic appeal or status signaling. Instead, delegates were encouraged to present genuine examples of cross-species cooperation from their homeworlds, partnerships based on mutual benefit and communication rather than domestication. Ambassador Krelix had become one of Mira's most dedicated students, working to develop a communication protocol with a species previously considered too dangerous for diplomatic contact. His spores, once tools of emotional display, were being trained as transmission vectors for complex information exchange. As Mira concluded her presentation, Elder Zorix approached the platform. The ancient Meridian had shed his formal council regalia, now dressed in the simple garb of a researcher. "Dr. Shaw," he said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of diplomatic experience. "Your demonstration has catalyzed a transformation in interstellar relations. The Council has unanimously voted to establish the Criterion Communication Initiative, with you as its director." Mira bowed respectfully. "I'm honored, Elder, though the credit belongs to Calyx as much as to me." "Indeed," the Elder agreed, his compound eyes reflecting the light from Calyx's neural crest. "Which is why the Criterions will be granted observer status in the next Galactic Council session, the first step toward full diplomatic recognition." Calyx's neural crest pulsed with patterns that Mira had come to recognize as satisfaction. She issued a series of whistles, and the massive predator lowered itself to allow the Elder a closer examination of its communication organs. "He says he looks forward to teaching the Council about his species' perspective on galactic cooperation," Mira translated. "Though he suggests the Council chamber might need structural reinforcement." The Elder's scaled face shifted in what Mira had learned was a Meridian smile. "A practical consideration we've already addressed. Tell me, Dr. Shaw, when you first brought Calyx to the station, did you anticipate this outcome?" Mira considered the question as she watched delegates from across the galaxy studying Criterion communication diagrams. Their own companions beside them, no longer accessories, but partners in a new form of diplomacy. "I hoped for understanding," she replied honestly. "I didn't dare hope for transformation. But that's the beauty of true communication. It always carries the potential to change both parties in ways neither could predict." Calyx's neural crest pulsed in agreement, the pattern perfectly synchronized with Mira's words. A visual harmony of two very different minds united in common purpose. The Elder nodded slowly. "A lesson worth remembering, as we face a galaxy full of species we have yet to properly understand." He gestured toward the assembled delegates. "They mocked you once for bringing a predator to a diplomatic function. Now they seek to emulate your method." "Not my method," Mira corrected gently. "Our partnership." She placed her hand on Calyx's neural crest, which brightened at her touch. "That's the final lesson in all of this. Elder Zorix, true diplomacy isn't about controlling the dangerous or displaying the beautiful. It's about finding the intelligence in the other, especially when that intelligence comes in forms we initially fear." As if to underscore her point, Calyx emitted a harmonic resonance that vibrated through the chamber. The sound carried complex emotional overtones that required no translation, a predator's song of triumph, not in conquest, but in connection. The delegates fell silent, listening. And in that moment of shared attention, the transformation Mira had initiated was complete. They had come to mock a human for bonding with an apex predator, never imagining she could command it. They stayed to learn that true communication transcended command entirely, opening pathways to understanding that no traditional diplomatic approach could achieve. In the vastness of space, with countless intelligent species yet to be encountered, it was a lesson the galaxy desperately needed to learn.